We are so happy to have Ellen Kaufman Dosick with us today. As some of you might remember, we had interviewed her at the end of last year. And once again, we have our yearly visit and check in with Ellen to see what's going on. I'm sure many people have that question, like, what is going on right now?
I definitely have that question.
Like all that time. So, without further ado, Ellen, please feel free to share. I have no other question but that. Why are we here? I actually do have a list of questions in my head, but right now I think I'm just going to start with the biggest one, which is please explain our current conditions and why we are feeling like we're swimming upstream, but at the same time, we're being carried by another current downstream. It almost just feels like the energies are so back and forth all the time. We just don't know which way we're going.
It's so true. Yeah, it is. It is the question. And I'll tell you, if I had any clarity or any answers, we'd all be in much better shape if any of us had any clarity or any answers. But the best I can figure out, by the way, before I even jump in, it's lovely to be with you guys again. And
Thank you.
what a
Thank
treat, what
you.
an
Likewise.
honor to join you
Thank
in this
you.
way. And so thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
I am greatly appreciative. And the best I can come up with is that it is the old answer that we've known for a long, long time, and that is that our 3D world, as we have known it forever and ever and ever and ever, is ending. And what that means is that everything associated with 3D is in the process of disintegrating. And that's everything from, major organizations like governments and institutions and education and medicine and politics and blah 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 to um, to communities and family structures and our own individual internal structures. All of it is in the process of letting go. And we have very mixed feelings, mixed responses to this. 3D has been a very painful journey. When separation is available and a possibility, and I can believe that I am separate from you, I can easily, hurt and destroy you without thinking twice about it. And that's been sort of the history of our 3D journey since we dropped from 5D oneness consciousness when we lost the Garden of Eden. And so it's really all we've ever known is, eat before you get eaten. And that's been a really, really rough journey. So on the one hand, we're very delighted to be able to let go of that. On the other hand, we've given countless lives to um, surviving 3D, to making it better, to getting the most out of it that we possibly can. And we've learned how to reap the incredible beauty that is available to us and the deep, deep satisfaction that we receive through the gift of our senses. And so hearing and seeing and touching and tasting and feeling and smelling and knowing, all of those things have also made this 3D journey exquisite. And so, like anything, it's like you've lived in a house for a long, 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 long time, and it's beginning to fall apart, and it's really too small for you anyway. And so you're getting ready to pack it all up and move to a larger house. And you're so excited and you're so full of anticipation. And at the same time, it's also very bittersweet.
Yeah.
And you go around and you take pictures of everything so that you don't have to let go of it entirely, because the letting go is a process. So, on the one hand, we feel this incredible anticipation and excitement about the possibilities of a limitless, expansive experience, a new world. And at the same time, we're grief stricken
Mhm.
at the loss of the familiar and also the beautiful.
Mm.
And so I think we're very much in what I would call a new renaissance. I mean, literally that word, another renaissance, a rebirthing.
Yeah. And how long is this rebirthing meant to be taking place?
Oh, for a long, 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 long
Long time.
time.
Yeah.
You know, when we think about the Renaissance of the, 1400s and 1500s and 1600s, you can
Right.
imagine how long
Yes.
this Renaissance can go on for.
Yeah.
That one also was preceded by a huge plague, right?
Mm.
And like the old has to be cleaned out
Yeah.
to make room for something new.
Mm.
And we're right in the midst of that. We're right in the middle of that. So, our rebirthing is really just beginning. And everything moves so very quickly these days. So I don't think it will take, 300 years, but I do think that we're going to be in the midst of the contractions of birth.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. It certainly feels like labor
Powerful
pains.
growth. It does,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it does.
For at least another 2, 3 years.
Wow.
So it's it's like, oh my gosh, when everything is falling down around you. I mean, it's no coincidence that we had the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and buildings collapsing, and we had the big building collapse in Florida.
Mm.
It's like everything is falling out from under us. It's all right now. And what do you hold on to when there's nothing to hold on to?
So, what do you hold on to when there's nothing to hold on to?
Um, that word faith is really a
Mm.
tough word,
Mm.
to hold on to something that is invisible.
Mhm.
Um, it's sort of like holding on to hope.
Mm.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, if you don't hold on to hope, you have nothing, right? You
Yeah.
are instantly thrown into the volcano pit of anguish and despair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we always have a choice, but sometimes it feels like it's not a very fair choice. We have to hold on to hope. And so we also have to hold on to that faith that says
Mm.
that this too shall pass,
Mhm.
and it doesn't belong to us. Timing always belongs to the full divine. And I don't think it's about surrender,
Mhm.
but I do think it is about compassion. Like whatever is in front of us or with us or within us, to walk in equal step with, to be in equal step with. And in that, then, there is room made for the presence of the divine.
Yeah.
And that's how moments become holy,
Mm.
until every moment is holy.
Mhm.
And we find ourselves then in that wholeness, that peace of that Garden of Eden 5D.
Mm.
Mm.
But oh my gosh, is it a process? And I don't know about you guys, but I'm just crying all the time.
Are
I mean,
you?
all the time, all the time, just all the time. It's a constant. Yeah.
For
So
me, I feel like some of the old stuff that I thought was done, that I really didn't even pay that much attention to at the time. Those are the bits that are kind of coming up a little bit. Like the stuff that I didn't think was that important, that now I'm like, oh, wait a second, I never actually dealt with that. Or,
Mm.
and for me, that, one of the things for me is the faith part, I guess, which is really interesting that you mentioned it, because I read somewhere that, and I thought it was a beautiful quote. It talks about how faith effectively, it wouldn't be faith if we could see it. It wouldn't be faith
absolutely,
if we
that's
didn't,
right.
if we knew it, right? Faith is, the point of faith is that, it's invisible, it's intangible. But
Right.
obviously, when we see all the stuff happening around us, and when our kind of, I wouldn't say demons, but the little teeth that are still there coming, trying to bite us. It does, those doubts do creep in. And then, faith is the first thing that it's a muscle that, unless trained, is the first thing to kind of, succumb to those teeth effectively.
Mm.
So I have to say, for me, it's been just a lot of questioning, a lot of revisiting things that really I did not feel I needed to revisit, but turns out I definitely did, which is great times. And
It's absolutely, the whole world is doing that. Truly, the whole world is doing that.
yeah,
Yeah. It's, whenever we get to an ending, we have to do a summary of it. We have to do a life review,
mm,
Mhm.
right? And a life review requires that we go back and sift through all the
mm,
all the boxes of junk that
mm,
we threw into a box and we said, well, we'll get to you later,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And this is later. Here
Yeah,
we are.
we got to later. It's like, like, because some of the things you think, you're like, oh, well, it got sorted. So I don't really need to think
Yes.
about it. It got sorted. And then it turns out, oh, wait, it got sorted in my reality, but not maybe in my mind or in my heart or in whatever it is. Like there, it wasn't so sorted, and I find myself saying things and I'm like, wait a second, did I just say that? Oh, wait. Oh, okay. All right. I guess that requires a little bit of further looking at. No idea that was still a thing. And, and I mean, I think for me, like the question that maybe I'm the only one who wants to ask this, but I'm going to do it anyway, is that what are the benefits, in your opinion, of being in 5D? Like we're going through this huge
You know,
break.
that's a great question, because I bet there are a lot of people thinking, what is the point of all of
What
this?
is
Like,
the
is there an
point?
upside,
We're
really?
seeing everything crashing. Like, fine, like maybe inside we're a little bit happier. But what is the upside of this whole move into this new, effectively, dimension? Like, we call it the Garden of Eden, but like, I don't think Adam and Eve had the best time in there. Like, I mean, that was more of a joke, but what is the upside? I guess, like, what's the point of this move? Why are we doing it? And what do we benefit from it? Sorry, I know that's quite a big question. I apologize.
It's a great question.
It's
It's a
about
great
as big as the
question.
first one we started with. So we're just
Yeah.
Oh
gonna
no, no, no.
clearly
It's much bigger. It is much bigger.
fair enough. We really came loaded today, didn't we?
Oh, it is a loaded time. Just a quick aside, we just walked through the whole high holidays in the Jewish season, and it felt like the most significant, heavy duty, pivotal point,
Hmm.
high holidays I've ever experienced. I've known nothing like this one.
Oh,
At the end of Yom Kippur, we were so wiped out. We got into bed, we stayed there for 3 days. We couldn't
Wow.
move. Yeah. It was so immense. And I really believe it was the choice was being put in front of humankind. Will you choose life or will you choose death?
hmm. It's interesting because
As
you came to
simple as
me,
that.
sorry, you came to me in a dream on Kol Nidre. You did.
Wow.
And it was like that. It was very much a choice,
Yeah.
mission
choice?
or not. It
It
was the mission.
totally, yep, it
Yeah.
totally felt like that.
Yeah.
But no, everybody I've spoken with, and now including you guys, we can't come up with the word. Like life or death is not quite it.
No.
The word significance or gravitas or heaviness or important. It's not it. I don't know what it is, but it's a choice. It's a reckoning point, you know.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
I think we can't find the word because we're not of 5D yet. So
Okay.
we have no idea what that 5D experience actually is. To your question, Rhea,
Okay.
you know, yeah, because we've never been there as conscious beings. We've never experienced that, and so um, you know, I can sort of paint you a picture, but you know, I'm making it up from whole cloth. You know, it's like, okay, you want to know what 5D is? Here, let's make something up.
As long as
So
you make it sound good, I'm down.
If you talk about rainbows and unicorns, Rhea's in.
Always in.
yeah.
And
Oh,
lots of
That's
like
her
little,
jam.
I don't know if you can see, but my nails are even hearts.
oh, it's so
I'm basically a
beautiful.
teenage girl walking around in a grown woman's body.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you see my horn yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, we know that the possibility, the choice of separation is the hallmark of this third dimensional experience. So likewise, oneness consciousness is the crux of 5D. And what does that mean, oneness consciousness? It means that we recognize and remember in every moment that everyone and everything and every moment is sacred. That there's nothing that is not an expression of the divine. And so no matter where I look, here, 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 at you, I, what I see is a manifestation of God or the divine or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
That. And if that is so, then I must treat everyone and everything in every moment with the greatest awe and love. You know, if love is the only possible response to coming upon the divine, then in 5D we are upon the divine all the time, both within and without.
Mhm.
And therefore the only possible place everyone and everything can be is in love. And therefore to think about hurting you would be the same notion as for me to say, and now I'm going to cut off my left hand. Why would I do that? I would never do that, right? So from that, then, we can imagine that then there's no one in the world who doesn't have enough of everything that is required for a fulfilled life, for full life, right? And then you can imagine from that who would not want to show up for that.
Sounds pretty cool.
So we don't have to numb, we don't have to run away, we don't have to hide, we don't have to keep secrets, we can just be. We don't have to work at doing. We can actually be human beings and be in grace. You know, that word grace is such a beautiful word. It comes from the Latin gratis, meaning free. So people define grace as, you know, the love is free, it's unconditional. But the reality is, we're made of unconditional love. There's every bit of matter has at its essence love. So if everything is love anyway, why would we need more grace? You know, well, grace is not free unconditional love. Grace is the freedom to receive all the love. But to do that, you have to show up with your doors open.
Yeah. Well, you can't
And
receive if your doors aren't open, I guess.
that's right. That's right. And it's been really dangerous to keep our doors open and unlocked for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. So we're really not very good yet at showing up and being fully present with all of our doors open. And so imagine a world in which there's no downside to showing up fully, to experience everything, to keep all your doors open and receive, because there's only love and light that is coming at you. Does that help? I mean, have
Yeah.
I painted a rosy enough picture?
Yeah, I mean, you've made it sound slightly more worth it.
Slightly. It's
I'm
like,
joking.
mm.
No, I mean, I have to say
Yeah.
from like, personal experience, and I wondered it is if you'd agree with me, but it's definitely something like more recently, I've definitely been having these flashes of this is all just a ride. Why are we working towards this ideal of a life or an expectation or something? Like every experience that kind of comes into our lives is designed to enrich us and is, what's the word, exactly as you said, just unconditional love in a different way. And I definitely can see glimpses of this kind of 5D world. But I guess what my final follow-up question on this would be is that, yes, I agree with you, but what in those situations where you have people who do not hold necessarily those 5D values and they're operating on the same street as others who do? How does that, how do we then have become a 5D world when everyone is not 5D in it? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so right now, and Liz, you were describing this perfectly, right now, our world is very much a Venn diagram, right? As the worlds sort of come together. And so there's consciousness and unconsciousness, and limitation and limitlessness, and right, all of that, and separation and oneness. And it's what's making it very stop-start, very rocky, very fragmented right now. Yes, and it will be this way for a few years. But just as you are not in any way aware of or conscious of 2D energies now, because you're in that higher range of frequency of 3D, so as we move, or 1D even, so as we move into 5D consciousness, those who participate, who wish to remain in 3D consciousness, will simply fade out of general consciousness.
Okay.
Right? It
So
will
it's a lot
be,
more gentle than I'm imagining.
I really do think it is. And I also think that, when we lost the Garden of Eden, when consciousness on Earth fell from 5D to 3D, there were a huge number of people, of beings who decided not to stay here, that it was not okay, that it was too painful, and they left. And I think we will see that, that as the vibrations raise higher and higher, more and more across the board generally, those who wish to remain in those lower frequencies will find it more and more and more uncomfortable, and will just not want to be here, right? I mean, it's sort of like, sometimes when I do in-person live classes and we're working with material at a very, very high level, I'll watch one or two or three people in the room just fall asleep
Oh, interesting.
because
Very sleepy.
that's right.
It's a
That's
lot
what
of
you're
work.
getting,
Yeah.
sleepy. Because they, it's like, they're overloaded.
Mhm.
The circuits are overloaded. And just like a baby, when the circuits get overloaded, boom, we take a nap, you know, We can't
Mm.
tolerate more. We're overstimulated. That's the end. That's all we're going to take in, and I'm going to sleep now, right? So,
It's
Is that
sometimes
why?
it's
Do you
a
think
bit.
we're all? Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say sometimes it's like when you get really wiped after a podcast, Rhea,
Oh
and
man, I
you're like,
pass
oh my
out.
god.
I pass out. I need to go sleep.
right. Or like we did after Yom Kippur, it was like, bam,
Yeah.
I ain't moving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like there are
Right.
days if we record podcasts and I'm like, I know the rest of the day is a write-off because
Right.
I'm just gonna have to lie down and close my eyes.
Precisely so. Exactly. And I think, you know, so many of us are just exhausted on a regular basis right now.
Oh my
I mean, I
goodness.
don't think there's anyone who um, can easily, just generally tolerate on a full-time basis these new higher energies. You know, like after a while you get too full of light and it's like, oh my God, let me out of here. I gotta go take a nap,
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? I mean, everyone I talk to is telling me that, that you know, they just automatically lie down every afternoon
Yeah.
because that's it, they're done.
I mean, I
I
feel
could
like,
do that.
I'm sorry for all new parents out there, but I have to say I had 9 hours sleep last night and I'm still tired. I feel like I'm still
I'm like,
tired.
Rhea, stop. I can't get more than 7.
Every time I say it to Liz, I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. She's like, oh, how many hours of sleep? I don't know, like 10. And then I'm like, sorry.
It doesn't matter. It's like
Yeah, it's tricky.
we're just being beamed all the time, you
Mm.
know?
We
And
are.
I think at night or when we go to sleep, we use that time to integrate, to try to integrate all that extra light and love, you know, those higher frequencies. So we're working all the time. So of course
Mm.
you're more tired when you wake up than when you went to sleep.
And it definitely feels like this latter half of the year has been a lot more work. I mean, I think you just sort of adjust to the vibration and then you sort of coast a bit and then you get more and then there's just more of that work and then you coast again. And it just definitely feels like post summer in the northern hemisphere, it was this latter half has just been okay, more work. And it's like, what happened again? We just kind of woke up one day and realized that we were just getting bombarded with all this
Mm.
energy.
No, for sure.
Absolutely. You're
Yeah.
It's like I
so,
blink and the day is done.
oh, absolutely. And it's, you know, 5D, of course, in those higher frequencies, things move much more quickly.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And we've been
Yeah.
seeing it now for the last 100 years, how fast. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years in which nothing happened.
Yeah.
You know, you look at past lives and they say, well, when was this? And I say, it doesn't matter because
At this
it
stage, it
could have
really
been
doesn't matter.
1100s, it could have been 300s, it could have been 1700s. It makes no difference. It was all the same. Nothing changed for thousands of years. And now everything, you know, then maybe 20 years ago, we became aware that things were changing, you know, faster month by month. And then it was week by week. And then it was day by day. And now it's moment by moment.
It's
It's
crazy.
like, when do we catch our breaths? Well, we
Yeah.
don't.
No.
We'll never catch our breaths again.
Ever again. No.
Not
And
ever.
what is so I don't know if I'm going to phrase this well. So where are we going to how are we going to better understand time as
Good
we move
question.
into this new vibration or these new vibrations and 5D? And I know a lot of people, and really anyone can attest, you don't even have to be spiritual to attest to all these shifts of time and our relationship to time and days collapsing and it's Monday, but it feels like Friday, or I thought Wednesday was Friday,
Oh, I
or
do
I
too.
thought that was not last month, but last year, etc. And as we know, time's collapsing, etc. What is this kind of new concept of time we're moving towards? I mean, I get that it's now time, and we've had episodes about now time,
Mm.
but what does any of that mean? Maybe you could sort of put it into other words that might sort of help people understand it. Please. Thank you in advance.
I also have very little understanding of this. The best I can see is that there will always be chronological time,
Mm.
like one thing happening before another, before another, before another, before another. And there is also now time in which all is, right? in the
Okay.
moment, in every moment.
Mhm.
And they exist simultaneously,
Okay.
and they exist together. And I don't know how they're interconnected. I don't know that, or maybe that's not even the right word,
Hmm.
but it's um, we can perceive now time as being like an infinite eternal matrix,
Okay.
in which if you enter the matrix, everything is available, right?
Yes.
Because there's nothing that is not within that matrix, right?
Right.
And you can and there is also a developing timeline, as in this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens.
Hmm.
And um, and I think it will be that way until we reach a dimension that is a vibrational frequency in which there is no more free will,
Hmm.
in which we merge with the full divine in such a full way that we give up the notion of free will.
Hmm.
But so long as we have free will, we get to choose, right? We get to make choices about what's first and what's second and what's third, and how this unfolds, and what our response is going to be, and how this unfolds, and right? And so long as we're in fifth dimension, seventh dimension, and part of ninth dimension, there are going to be these two time designs
Hmm.
that live together and probably partner together, but I don't know what the relationship looks like. Yeah.
Hmm.
And once we get to ninth dimension, there is no more free will.
Interesting.
When you say
And then
free
the book.
will,
Hmm.
do you mean just the capacity to choose, to have
Yes.
agency in any way?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not that once we're in ninth dimension, we cease to have any agency.
Mm.
It's simply that our agency is so fully aligned with the divine agency
Hmm.
that there's no crack between them, right? So it will, the divine energy will always be expressed uniquely through us because we're unique, each of
Mm.
us,
Mm.
but the alignment is complete.
I understand.
Hmm.
Because when we talk about free will and choices, we say that when you are conscious and you are connected, I mean, we can go as far as say when you're in higher consciousness and you're connected to your higher self, whilst you definitely always have choices, it feels almost icky to choose outside of your divine design. So whilst in some ways you have total free will, at the same time you don't, because to choose outside and to choose separation would almost would feel like separating oneself again. So it feels like from your description, it's just like as we continue to raise our vibration, as our consciousness grows, that kind of, whereas maybe now we maybe hesitate or make a couple of choices that feel maybe slightly icky, or, we have doubts, or we have, all those kind of things. Feel like the more our consciousness rises, the more that the choices become so natural, they are one with the divine rather than just a reflection of it.
Such a beautiful way to say it, Rhea.
Hmm.
And it goes right back to your talking about the little teeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
So
shared
basically,
big teeth.
little teeth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for how long have we been taught to not trust our own knowing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And our own knowing is, that clear glimpse of the divine design path.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I mean, I joke, I'm a professional. Basically, they're like, what do you do? I was like, I'm just a professional enabler. I just basically tell people to do what they do want to do what they know, whatever it is. That's basically why I'm here. I'm just here to enable you.
That's great. That's so beautiful. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. People call all the time saying, with the question, should I do this or this? Should I do this or this? Should I do this or this? What do I know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
You'll know
Yeah.
better than anyone else.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in like kind of following on from what we were saying before, in your opinion, do you think as we move through, even though it's going to take 2 to 3 years, which in the scheme of things feels very long right now, but if you think about where we were 2 to 3 years ago, it was a blink of an eye. Do you feel like the energy will lighten and lighten during those 2 to 3 years, or will it be more like this, or will it be more like this? I'm glad there was a video today so I could actually use my hands to show it.
What does this mean though?
This is like, we're pushing against it. We just keep going. Like, and then, we're hoping not to fall over.
And take naps. In the
We're just going to take a nap while we can, whilst we're still being like moved back and forth.
That's right. That's
Or will it kind of lighten?
And could we say all of the above?
Yeah, we certainly can.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, what's the difference, Rhea, between this and this? It all seems the same.
I know, one's up and down, one's back and forth. It's all like, some
I feel like that's like a carnival ride. So
Life feels like a carnival ride at the moment.
It does, doesn't it? Oh my gosh, we are so white knuckling it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And and as we build this oneness, or as it becomes more apparent to us, we don't have to do anything, it's always been there. So as we become more aware of the oneness, what that means is that as a whole, we're doing all of it. So some people are doing this, and some people are doing this, and some people are doing this, and so, right? And
so what would be your advice for someone in these next couple of years in order to make it as, I don't even know what the word is, I guess, bearable, seamless.
I think seamless might be a little bit of a reach.
Yeah, bearable as possible.
Bearable.
Let's go with bearable. How does one navigate these next couple of years? For those who are kind of more embracing the 5D energy, maybe personally in 5D themselves, or, to those who are just curious about what's going on and are ready to kind of move into something different because they're noticing that the world is changing. How would we encourage them? What would we give them as a takeaway so that they would be able to, I don't know, manage this better? I know it's very difficult.
No, it is difficult, but it's an easy answer, and that is to simply agree to show up. The more we can say, here I am, lay it on me,
Bring it.
Bring it on, and show up for it, and feel it, and experience it, and stand witness to it. And don't shield your eyes, and don't turn away, and don't try to go numb. Just we've believed forever and ever that we're too little to handle things. Mm-hmm. And so when the going has gotten rough, we've attempted to not see, not hear. We do it with alcohol and overwork and running around like crazy people. And whatever helps us be distracted from what's right in front of us. But what's right in front of us, always right in front of us and within us, there's no separation. Whatever is right here is the gift of the moment. Mm-hmm. And if we can just open and let it flow through us, we prove to ourselves over and over again that we're not little, that we're really big, that we can handle it's not anything, that we can handle everything, everything, and all at the same time. That indeed we are multidimensional. We are fully already multidimensional. And if we can just do that, it's like an exercise, it's like a practice. Then we build that multidimensionality muscle. Right?
So I guess to expand, we have to let ourselves expand.
That's right. And we're already expanded. makes me crazy. It's like, do you remember well, I'm aging myself. I'm telling you my age here. But there was an old cartoon with Baby Huey in it. And Baby Huey was this giant grown-up chicken. I think he was a chicken. I don't know. And who wore a diaper and talked baby talk. But he was huge, and that's what that's what a lot of us look like right now. We're huge. But we're still, thinking that we need diapers. I mean,
Mm.
some of us are getting to the age where we do, but you know,
Oh.
Or just some of us pee a little when we laugh, but yeah.
that's right, that's right, that's right. So, we're already huge. We're already fully grown.
Hmm.
We're already there.
Yeah.
We always have been. We've just denied that and been taught to deny it. So, we say it takes courage to feel the grief and the sorrow or the pain or the hurt that is mine, that is in my family, that is in a family in China, right? That it take courage is such a wonderful word. It comes, of course, from the French cœur, heart, as in open your heart. Just open your damn heart. Open your heart.
Just show up and
Let
open
it.
your heart, guys.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
not
Just
that
let it.
hard.
It's not. Just let it flow through you, because there's nothing. I mean, there's a beginning to sorrow and there's an end to sorrow,
Mm.
right? There's a beginning to joy and there's an end to joy. There's a beginning to, right? It's
Mhm.
like nothing, if anything is true, it's that the only constant is change.
Yeah.
And so if we can just show up and be in equal step with,
Hmm.
right? Which is the
Yeah.
definition of compassion.
Mm.
So, Ellen, I have a question. Not even a really question as much as a request. Because earlier you shared a little bit of the story of when Earth moved into separation, right? When the Garden of Eden was lost, and that there were souls who decided not to. There were souls who decided not to stay, so that they would not have to live in separation. And I remember you sharing that story before and explaining that a lot of the souls are the ones who are beginning to come back, right? To help Earth get there again. And I always thought you told the story rather beautifully and one that I could never replicate or try to do it, no matter how hard I tried. But I do feel like there's something very rich that I think, given our entire conversation around oneness and what's the point of all of it. And I think it might jog some people's memories a bit to hear that story again, because it is so significant, and one that I think first time I heard it gave me chills, because there is that sense of recognition. Because there are some, I think, who are on mission or who have really come here for this sort of consciousness game that we're playing to get there, and they've still forgotten, or they still remain on the fence, right? Of, are you sure I'm here for that? Really? How about next lifetime? And we all know this is the lifetime. And so I would just love for you to share a little bit if you're able.
Well, I'd love to hear this. I'm so into this right now.
So, the Garden of Eden was so beautiful that Full Source decided to come and live in the garden. And Full Source was so lonely and wanted partners and believed that human beings could be that. And but in the garden, we were in the age of innocence. That is, we had no consciousness, we had no understanding of the beauty and the abundance and the holiness and the grace. And we were like amoebas, you know, just we had the consciousness of amoebas. When it was hot, we crawled into the shade. When it was cool, we crawled into the sun. And we helped ourselves to eat when we were hungry. And so it became necessary then for humans to become conscious. And so Earth agreed to invite, to participate in all of this, beings from the planet Nibiru called Anunnaki, and they came to Earth because their atmosphere was around their planet was being lost, and in order to stabilize their atmosphere, they could do that if they put into their atmosphere very finely ground gold. And Earth had a lot of gold. So the Anunnaki came, and they came as the other. And once there is an other, you immediately fall from 5D oneness to 3D separation, in which the presence of the other can be. Yes?
Yeah.
And so when Earth fell from 5th dimension to 3rd dimension, the Garden of Eden was lost. And with that fall in consciousness, we forgot our own divinity.
Mm-hmm.
And we forgot that everything is divine. We just forgot, as Liz, as you just said, who we are. And the one tree of life and knowledge split into two, and the tree of life was remaining upright and erect, the masculine, but the tree of knowledge, the feminine, was buried upside down in the earth and had to go, in the great feminine intuitive consciousness, had to go underground for eons upon eons of time. And with that then, many decided that they couldn't allow this to be, many humans, and they left their bodies and they left Earth to find themselves in a higher dimension. And in that higher dimension, they remembered, because we remember, you know, in the higher frequencies, and they remembered what had happened, and they vowed that they would return to Earth before the fall, using the wormholes so that they could manipulate time, so that they could arrive back on Earth before the fall happened, and knowing that it was going to happen, prevent it from happening. And so they organized and they made a great mission. And that mission was to use their Merkavot, their great multidimensional travel vehicles that each of us has in our heart space, to travel through wormholes to arrive on Earth and change her story. Her story, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And but the missions failed. And as they got closer and closer to Earth, those time tunnels were collapsed upon them. Those wormholes were collapsed upon them. And the missions failed because it was Earth's decision to fall so that consciousness could grow for humankind. And so they were not allowed to save Earth. And they were, that collapse and the failures of those missions, because they tried again and again, it wasn't just a death, it was an annihilation. It was like a nuclear blast. And those beings were like smashed to smithereens, like their points of essence were actually smashed. And so there were MASH units available, set up around the cosmos to put Humpty Dumpty's back together again. And what it was actually a very beautiful thing, because what that meant was that all around the cosmos there were stations and beings in those stations who remembered Earth's 5D essence, her beingness as Roja, and remained committed to restoring her to that level of consciousness. And so eventually all of those beings realized that they were never going to be able to accomplish that saving of Earth in the ways that they had originally thought they would do it, and that they needed to birth into human beings in a natural way and try to remember. And, you know, this has been such a dense place for such a long time that it was very hard for them to remember. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they caught glimpses of it, but couldn't hold it. And sometimes, every now and then, they could hold it and use what was there around them to begin the restoration and the remembering. And so we had periods like the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and Gesundheit and
Thank you.
you know, there were times when, but they didn't last because they were not born out of a place of peace. They were born out of a place that had already been corrupted.
Mm.
You know, like we see in governments forever and ever and ever, you know, please, opposition, help me pass this thing that's going to help all the people. And the opposition says, yes, I will vote for that if you do this corrupt thing, right? And so things that are born in that way can't sustain.
Right. Because it's tainted
eventually-
with separation and
That's right. That's
right.
right. So it's only very recently now that we come to a time where the consciousness has raised enough that ones who are dedicated to restoring Earth and humankind to our 5D expansive experience again can actually remember long enough to begin to act from a place of remembering the whole thing and carrying it forward in a straight line. And so here we are.
And one thing I think I've seen is that a lot of, I would say a number of those beings who really do remember, who had that experience, they really are coming in now. I feel like the younger generations and those yet to be born really are those beings. They are so special, so unique, the type of beings we have never seen before.
Brand new breed.
They are really a brand new breed. It is fascinating to me. I feel like they're trickling in now, but we're going to start seeing larger swaths of these souls come through over, you know, the next decade or two. But I'm starting to see them. I'm absolutely fascinated because they do not operate in any other way, but you can't even say it's a 5D way. It is this almost cosmic, who are you sort of way. It's fascinating to me. And I'm excited to see what they do because, you know, they're the ones to me who really do almost carry that new matrix, that sort of body of knowledge that we don't even grasp.
It's amazing, isn't it? We don't
Mhm.
even speak the same language.
No.
We have no idea what they're talking about or how their thinking processes go. It's
Mm.
just incredible. You know,
Yeah.
no matter how far along we get, we are always in the process of knocking down walls around us to see further. And there are, you know, but they have no walls.
Yeah.
They don't have to knock anything down. They're already there. It's so amazing. It's
Yes.
just God bless, you know? Wow. Like if you ever doubted,
Yes,
just be around these kids for a moment or two. Oh my gosh.
absolutely. And it's amazing to experience, but it's also humbling. And I also wonder, have we done enough for them? And is there anything more we can be doing other than what we're already doing? Because I think, wow, I almost feel like they're the ones doing us a favor and we can't thank them enough.
Here, here. And I think our job is to just keep holding the center. Just keep holding um, the foundation in place long enough for them to have it remade,
Okay.
right? So, you know, we've been promised for a long, long time that our world, as it disintegrates, will never move into anarchy. There may be pockets where there's anarchy, but as a whole, there won't be anarchy.
Right.
That will be able to hold the foundation long enough for
Mhm.
them to make the leap.
Yeah.
And
I've been seeing
that's
that.
our
Yeah.
job.
Mm.
And
Mm.
you know, I've always called us the desert generation. You
Mm.
know, when the children of Israel left Egypt, they were all slaves. They had been slaves for generations. And there they were out in the desert, wandering around for 40 years before they could go to the promised land. And why was that? Why were they there for 40 years? So that every single person, except for two, but every single person who had been born a slave could die. So that only those born in freedom could move into the promised land.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And so, what was the job of that desert generation? It was to hold the fabric so that all of those ones born in freedom could get to that promised land. But not even Moses could go into that promised
No.
land. Right.
Who were the two? Was it no, was it was it
It was
Mary?
Caleb and Joshua.
Okay.
And did they get to go to the promised land?
They did.
Rhea's like, I need a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And why were they able to go when no one else could?
Well, Joshua took over from Moses and had always been Moses's um, I don't know how to say this, his kid, you know, his successor. He was always, yeah. So he learned, and then Moses. They say Moses placed his hands. He gave him, in the Jewish mode, it's called smicha, the placing of hands. That is like Spock. He transferred everything, right? You know, it was a heart to heart, mind to mind, you know, transfer of everything. And um, and Caleb was Joshua's best friend,
Oh, so Joshua wouldn't be alone.
and Caleb was one of the 10, um, they call them spies, but there were 10 who were sent into the promised land to uh, see if it was doable, if it was, and um, most of the spies came back and said, "Oh my gosh, the land is filled with giants. We'll never, never be able to live there ever." Caleb was the only one. Caleb and Joshua were the only two who said, "Yes, we can do this."
Okay.
So, as in, they already saw it, they were already there. Just like these are the kids who are already there.
Yeah.
Right? But we will never move into the promised land. We won't. For us, it will always be a second language.
Yeah.
For these kids, 5D is their first language. For us, we would always be living in translation.
Yeah.
So our job is to get them there and to make sure they're safe and secure and supported all the way there.
I'm going to ask the question, why would we choose this job, not the next job? Where you're
Rhea's like, did I come too soon?
I think I came too soon.
Oh. Well, for many reasons. One is, first of all, the story never ends. You can choose to come back as often as you want, as many times, forever and ever and ever and ever. In the promise, you can do that. Absolutely, it's a free will universe. You can choose what you want to do. But the second thing is, this is not the first lifetime that you've worked to bring 5D. You've probably worked every single lifetime. And every single lifetime prior to this one, you've died believing that you failed. This time you're not going to fail. This time there will be victory.
So is that where the faith comes in that we were discussing at the beginning of the episode?
I think so. Yeah. So it's a true completion on every level. And how fulfilling and satisfying could that, possibly be? Oh my gosh. I mean, you're a hero.
Are we all heroes then? Would that be
Yes.
would that be the case for anyone who's working to bring 5D in this in this lifetime?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
As much as I'd love to believe I'm special, but
You are.
Totally and completely special.
Yeah.
Because it takes, for you to be here in body, there were 1,000 other souls that were leaping and jumping up and down and saying, choose me, choose me, choose me. No, God said, I want Rhea.
Sorry. I gotta say, I want that one. He's a bit moody in the mornings, but he'll get the job done.
She might be a little late for things too. A punctuality issue, but the world will cope.
Yeah, she was, maybe it's a reaction because I was too early in all the other lifetimes. I'm like, this one, you know what?
There you go.
You're like, people are gonna have to wait for me.
They're gonna wait for me this time.
Yeah. I've said my whole life, time is not my friend. Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. So that's a beautiful way of looking at it, actually.
It is quite.
Because we all have that, I think. This idea of synonymous with separation is this idea of failure.
Right.
That.
Right. Exactly.
The two, I don't really, we've failed in being at one with ourselves, therefore we've had to separate. We've failed at being good enough, therefore we've had to allow all these things to, happen to us. We've failed at being powerful, therefore we've become a victim. There's so much failure in it that this move, I mean, definitely personally, when we're talking about this kind of at the beginning, Liz, when you said you were being pulled backwards and forwards at the same time, that feeling we've all been kind of talking about, there's a part of us that I guess we don't know what it's like not to fail.
I know. And it has never been a failure. That's the whole trick of it, right? Yeah. That this was perfect. That this, I don't think it's perfect, but somebody thinks it's perfect.
Yeah.
That we attained consciousness by walking through 3D and separation. From my vantage point, there has to be a better way. There had to have been some kind of better design. And I hold God responsible forever and ever.
I mean,
And I won't
just
let
throwing
God
some out,
affect
mass amnesia, that would have worked really well.
Rhea has thought about this a lot, that there
I thought
have
about
been there are many possible pathways, that this one could not have been the only one or the
Yeah.
best
Oh
one or the
man, oh
ideal
man. I
one.
mean, if God is an infinite mind, this is what came out. Are you kidding me?
This was the plan.
Right.
Really?
Make me
Trial
think
by
I fail
fire?
time and time again.
Yeah,
So when I
God, go
finally
back
don't
to the drawing
fail,
board. This is not okay. Right. But somehow, this is the perfection that was chosen, and here we are. Yeah.
Here
and
we
maybe
are.
late, and the thing about time, I guess, bringing it back to that, is that we only will know why it was perfect once it's done.
Or, or, or
Or
maybe,
we could still give some notes.
right. That's
I've
right.
still got
Because
some
you
notes.
I think the divine is always accepting notes, really. I think that there's just a suggestion box at every life review of
Yeah.
this is how we could improve upon. Let's
Yeah.
just take that.
Yeah.
Take that
I think it's
forward
called,
next time.
yeah, I think it's called prayers, right? Like,
Oh, true.
like the prayers are always, please God, you can do better, do better.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. We're not asking, we're not saying, please, can we be better? We're just saying, you do better.
That's right. Absolutely. Right.
Wow.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I just think it's, it's an interesting time to be talking to you, because obviously the last time we spoke, it was very much the proceeding to all of this, and it was very much about kind of like we're cakes that are about to be baked, and we're just figuring out to find our little toe, not even our foot, in the water, and now we're immersed in it in every single way. And I think that whilst there'll be people who have a strong amount of faith and belief that it'll all be perfect, whilst there are others who probably have very little, I think it's a really interesting time for us to be kind of meeting and having these conversations, because I mean, as Liz and I have said at one point, like, we call this time the what the fuck time, like, just what the fuck.
That's right. That's right. And, you say that it will be perfect. No, it already is perfect. It's
Yeah.
perfect right now.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to show up for.
Yeah.
That whatever is in front of me is perfect.
Yeah.
And it's a gift being offered. And it's for me to open to receive it.
Mm.
And yeah. So it's already perfect, which doesn't take any faith. It just takes a knowing that we're big enough to show up for it.
Mm.
Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely about knowing that this is the lifetime. I don't know how I always knew that, but that one knowing's there, but also accepting that this wasn't the lifetime for the end of it either. But that it would just be a pivotal one. And I think that's enough to carry us, right? It's the planting the tree for the future generations. It's not about basking in the garden myself, but I do feel some weird perverse joy in this work. And I think that's where it feels perfect, or how I experience the perfection of it, is because I feel so rooted and grounded in what I do, because it can't possibly be anything else anymore. That feels that's the perfection.
And Liz, if I can just say one piece about that, and that is that it's not that we're going to live in the Garden of Eden. It's that in this moment, I am already in the Garden of Eden. And, there's only joy. I mean, even as the tears are coming down, there's only joy. And in front of me is this window with this glorious tree, this pepper tree that has been my partner in crime for 20 years, because it's right outside my window, and it's glorious and it's beautiful, and wherever my eye falls and whatever piece of news I hear, it's glorious and it's perfect and it's beautiful. and I am permanently in love. It is the Garden of Eden now.
Mhm.
I think I told you the story of our beautiful facilitator who went to Baghdad with a group of people. Oh,
No,
this is such
no.
a great story. So, our from the first class of soul memory discovery facilitators came this beautiful woman. She lives in Colorado, and at the second um, Iraq War, she and 11 other people from her community decided that they would fly to Baghdad. And you remember, Baghdad was under constant explosions and bombs, and everything was blowing up, and there were car bombs and blah, blah, blah. And they decided to fly to Baghdad and provide um, succor for the inhabitants of Baghdad. And they were going to be there for 2 weeks. And their one agreement was that there would be no fear. And so they went and they did that. And at the end of 2 weeks, they were at the airport. And Sophia made the decision that she was not going to return with them. She was going to stay.
Mm.
And she spent the next, I think, 2.5 months traveling through Iraq and Iran and Syria and Lebanon and Saudi Arabia and Egypt. She traveled throughout. She was alone. She was female. She was American. She spoke only English. And she did not have a penny on her. And she behaved as though this was the Garden of Eden. She only came with love. She never missed a meal. She never slept without a roof over her head. She was never in danger at any moment. She was never threatened at any moment. She had the Garden of Eden within her, and all was well. It comes from within. You know, this one fabric that we talk about is made up of an infinite number of threads. We are each one of those threads. It's up to each of us to be that Garden of Eden right now, to hold the perfection, to be in love. And in doing so within ourselves, we have co-created the Garden of Eden for the whole fabric, because we're all connected, right? There is no separation.
So really the key to moving the world into 5D is to
be
embracing the fact that we are 5D already.
That's right, to be there already.
Mm.
Like Caleb and Joshua, we are already in love.
And so in that way, we do get to experience the promised land.
Amen.
Mm.
We can each hold it for as long as, I mean, sometimes you can only hold it for 5 seconds, but that's 5 seconds. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I guess it gets longer.
It does. The more we build that muscle, the longer we can hold it for without needing a nap.
Well, you know, I tell you what I've just started doing. I've just started to going to bed earlier. And I keep telling myself, oh, it's just me being mature. But I'm like, I think there's a part of me that's like, but I'm ready to go out and dance again. Like, you know, we don't need to go to bed at 3 midnight.
I think it is maturity. I vote yes.
Yeah.
Definitely maturity.
It's adulting. Rhea, you're just adulting now, like the rest of us.
All are. We all are. Oh my
But
God.
like everything else, I guess I was late to adulting.
Yeah. All of us. Yeah. But we're getting there.
Mm.
You know, it's a big deal to do a life review. The whole world is doing a life review, you know, deciding what's great that we want to bring with us and what didn't work, and we want to leave it behind. And to leave it behind, we first have to embrace it and accept it and bless it, and then we can let it go. Right?
And when you say embrace it, accept it, bless it, and let it go, when you talk about embracing it, does that mean bearing witness to it in its truth?
Yes. And the truth always is, Rhea, that in that time space, we did the best we knew how to do.
Yes. Always.
And it may not have measured up to even our puny standards, but it was the best that was available. There's not a one of us who wakes up in the morning and thinks, oh, how can I screw so-and-so today?
No.
I don't know. I think there are
How
some.
can I destroy my child today? How can I really hurt my best friend today?
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up and thinks that, right? We wake up thinking, okay, here's a grand opportunity. And sometimes we get it and sometimes we miss it. But we're always doing the best we know how to do.
So that's the first bit. And then the second bit you said was, so there was, oh my gosh, I can't remember the
Embrace
first one.
it.
Embrace it. And then the next one was
Accept it.
accept it. And is that,
Honor it.
so accepting it and honoring it, that's really just accepting that we were doing our best and honoring
That's
the
right.
fact that we always want to do our best.
That's right. And that we're human.
Yeah.
And that it's been a really tough place, this place of density, this 3D world of ours. I mean, it's just stunning to me that most people are even upright and vertical right now, that we
Yeah.
can even put sentences together and, speak sometimes fairly coherently. I mean, it's like miraculous. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's true. And then when you say let it go, what do you mean by that?
As in energetically say, and that's done, that's complete.
Okay. So it's not about like telling it, go off now. It's just about literally bringing it to completion within.
That's right.
Okay.
There was such an amazing thing that just happened. So,
Ooh.
after 5 days after Yom Kippur, we begin yet another huge holiday that's 8 days long. It's the Harvest Festival. And at the end of that is yet another holiday called Simchat Torah. And on Simchat Torah, we finish the Torah and we begin it again, all in sort of one breath. And the end of Deuteronomy, of course, is the death of Moses. It's the end of that life. And it always makes me weep because it's been a very long book that we've been reading. It took us a whole year to read it. And most of that book has been about the story of Moses. And it's so beautiful. It ends with, and he couldn't, God took him to the height of Mount Nebo so he could see the whole promised land, but he wasn't allowed to go in. And God took Moses with a kiss. It says, Al pi Adonai, from the mouth of God. God took Moses with a kiss, as in he took his breath from him with a kiss. And God buried Moses, God's self, somewhere on Mount Nebo. And the last line is, and there has never been a being like Moses again, ever. And that's the end of Deuteronomy. And with that, I mean, we do that every year. But this year, it finally hit me in like a ton of bricks. It was like being knocked over. Like we finished that story. It was complete. It's complete. And in the next breath, we say, in the beginning. Wow. I mean, we're completing this world as we have known it. And we are at the same moment beginning a new creation. Wow. And there was light. It was just an amazing sense this year that this is true.
I think sometimes we say things, you know, we hear platitudes, we hear cliches, and to someone it might sound the same as always. But to when you start to fully understand, all of a sudden the truth, the layers, the truth that was always in there just kind of smacks you in the face a little bit.
It's a
I mean,
great way to say it.
I always think about the first session I had with Liz, my first soul memory session. Everything she said at the time, I was like, yeah, so true. Totally believe it. You know, so resonates with me. And then now I listened to it 3 years later. I was like, oh, there was a whole other conversation being happened right underneath there. And I just couldn't hear it yet.
Right.
And all of a sudden you just realize that there's so much more beauty and layers to this whole journey with things that are literally right in front of us.
That's
and
right.
until we're able, you know, and as our consciousness grows, as our love grows, the more we can understand it, because we're not understanding it from the mind anymore. We're understanding it from somewhere else.
Absolutely.
I know that's the best way I can explain it.
You're so.
No, I think it's perfect.
How many times do we look at something and not see it? I mean, I'm looking at your room and you have this beautiful red wall hanging. And I'm sure, you know, you glance at it and walk by it, you know, a million times a day. But you could also just get lost in that red and fall in love with it. And everything else that is around us all the time, and just be in that space of hyper awareness, you know, all the time.
And I guess that's what you mean by the now moment.
That's showing up.
That's right. Showing up.
Yeah. That we get to see things that have always been there, but we never had the presence to notice it before. We never, you know, it was here and we could never meet it. Right? And now we're beginning to meet it sometimes.
It's lovely.
It is.
Hopefully more often as time goes on.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Liz, do you have anything else that
so many things that we didn't get to that I will pray for the next time. I'm just very grateful for the story. Thank you. But I do know that when I say no, but I know that you've discussed it in your Cosmic Times, which we also talk about in our previous conversation with you that you put out monthly. So the divine feminine, the divine masculine, it seems like there's still yet to be a conversation, a significant one. And it's funny, it almost sort of comes into consciousness and it doesn't. And I kind of thought, oh, it's all resolved then because we're not really we haven't seen it for a while. But now it seems like it's peaking. It's not even, I don't mean peak. I meant it's sort of like peeking through. And we're getting glimpses, little teeth, and we're getting glimpses. And I thought, oh, we're going to have a conversation, but it almost doesn't seem like time either, because I feel like there's more to come. There's more to be seen. There's more to be embraced. There's more to be unpacked. And that's interesting to me, because I feel as if, and as we know, the divine masculine feminine story has been going on and on and on and on and on. And even in spiritual circles, it's been talked about on and on and on and on ad nauseum. And you would thought, oh, it's got to be over, right? We've brought it to completion. And no, not at all. And I think, oh, Ellen, we have to talk, but maybe not yet. But that is definitely on my list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it so beautifully earlier, Liz, that, you know, we grab a little bit and then we have to back off and let it integrate. And then we grab a little bit more and then we have to back off and let it integrate. Very much like infants, you know, we can tolerate being awake and seeing this vast amount of stimulation, you know, for 15 minutes. And then that's all we can tolerate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's very much a long birthing process. I just want to take a moment and remind everyone
Oh, yes.
about, yes, about Rabbi Wayne Dosick's new book, Radical Loving One God, One World, One People, in which, I mean, if you haven't grabbed it yet,
Mm.
please do. It will solidify your sense of faith, and it is the best story about the Garden of Eden I know.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
The
Okay.
best story about 5D, about what's coming and how we can enable that I know. It's
That's
just a
beautiful.
stunning and amazing and perfect timing book right now. So
And Ellen, is it available on Kindle or just in hardback?
it is available on Kindle.
Great, great,
Absolutely.
great.
Yes. Yes. You can get it on Kindle and through Amazon and any other way that, yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a perfect book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've no doubt. I own all of his books.
Yes. Well, this one is the cap. This
Oh,
one is,
amazing.
yeah, this one is, it will blow your socks off.
And
Yeah,
how
I
long did
can't.
he work on it? How long
Uh,
how
oh,
long?
several years. He actually finished it before the pandemic.
Wow.
Okay, wow.
So then he had to, before it got published, he had to write an afterword that threatened to become longer than the book itself.
Oh.
But, right.
Now that 2020 happened.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so it was a long write and a long development, and but oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
Mm,
People
Mm.
describe weeping their way through it because
wow.
it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
exciting.
I have a final question for you, Ellen, kind of bringing that in a little bit. It's like, when we talk about mission and partnership, right? It's very clear that both
About what?
about
About
mission and partnership and kind of
uh-huh.
purpose and all the rest of it. It's
Yes,
very
yes.
obviously, you and your husband, you are very much both doing different things, but somehow they intertwine. And I wonder whether, just from a practical perspective, you could tell us a little bit of how you guys support each other, how it actually works in reality. I don't know. Is that a big, I don't know if that's the right, I mean, Liz, stop me if that's not like the right kind of
I
question.
think
I'm
it's a
just,
great question. I mean, Ray is really exploring partnership. That's a really big topic for our podcast, and relationships. And we know that they're all changing and the 3D paradigm of relationship is shifting, but we do understand soul partnership will remain so long as there are those of us on mission. And
Right.
she sees me with my husband and she's like, okay, that's cool. A little boring, but cool.
oh no, it's not boring. It's very stable and nice. but
Yeah.
I'm, it's just interesting because I'm sorry, I'm just like the perennial student. So I'm just curious to see how it works.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that our offices are on either side of a like a 20-foot hallway, and the doors are almost always open, except when I have a client or and so there's just a constant back and forth sharing and communication and the dance that goes with that. And it's a it's a challenging dance sometimes. Um, And what's important, I think, is that you just keep the dance going, that you just keep keep sharing and keep talking because, one of Rabbi Wayne's sermons this year was that, the only thing you can that is certain is uncertainty. So, just like you have to just keep showing up to yourself and the world, you have to keep showing up to your partnering as well because it's changing moment by moment, and most of the time I can't keep up with it, and neither can Rabbi Wayne, and so there's a dance.
Wow. Sorry, I
Yeah.
had to ask. That was an amazing answer. That was really
Ah!
cool. Thanks.
Does it ever get tense having so much always being in constant proximity? Or as you said, it's more of a dance, so it doesn't.
Right. No, there's no tension that I'm aware of in the constant proximity. There is tension when there's a lessening of that proximity.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's my experience anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very well said.
Yeah.
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 I definitely think a lot of people can relate to that
Yeah.
this past year. So
Yeah. It's
I
been
mean, I didn't really know Ricardo before this past year, really.
because he was never around.
No, yeah, I met him on my last birthday or the birthday before. Like I met him and then, you know, very quickly we went into a different world and I started to get to know him really well. But before that, he was just this, you know, fictional person that existed that
exactly.
helped Liz create children. Like I was like, is he real? I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly.
And now he's around all the time.
Right.
We exercise together, you know.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'm like the third child or whether I'm like the sister-in-law. I don't know how I fit in with the family,
Oh,
but
I
I'm there
know.
somehow.
I know. I know. I
See, we're
know.
just just putting down walls. We don't need walls, right? Just
Yeah.
breaking them
Right.
down. You show up.
Yeah,
That's
I'm just
right.
there.
That's how it is. Yeah,
That's
no
right.
more
So
walls.
every morning, I I ask that I am aware that everything that is in front of me is perfect and a gift being offered to me, and please let me accept it.
Mm.
It helps.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I like
because sometimes it doesn't feel very perfect.
I think acceptance is a really good word because
Yeah.
part of that, when you accept it, it's bringing it to you, but accepting it also means seeing it for what it is.
Yes.
Accepting has a lot of different meanings to it.
Yes.
And as you know, we're talking about kind of the head meanings and the heart meanings. The word acceptance is so powerful, just as the word responsibility is so powerful. You know, these words have such a degree of power within them, and we
Absolutely.
sometimes don't stop and realize what they really mean.
That's right.
I know
That's
we
right.
don't. Yeah.
In the dictionary, CEPT is from the same source. It means to receive, right?
Yeah,
To take in. So sept and sieve, to take in.
yeah.
Yeah. And AC is to, so it's to take in.
To take in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
lovely.
A tough one.
I mean, I don't know how much time or where we.
I have someone calling at 10, so in about 15 minutes.
So, I mean, Liz, is there anything else that you've.
Honestly, it was just the divine feminine, divine masculine conversation but I don't know if we could go there. Well, I mean, we maybe could. And I'm trying to think about how to frame it that it would be helpful.
Well, I guess it doesn't follow on from the conversation we were just having about partnership.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly. But I'm trying to figure out how to frame it that anyone who might listen and who may not even be familiar, maybe we just go to the root of that. What is the source of that story? Or do we want to tell stories as much as do we just want to explain? Can you explain? Do we? Excuse me. But
so we're going back to the original story. It may just be the start of our conversation that carries on another time. But when Earth fell from 5D to 3D, humankind and everything automatically then was given the free will to choose separation if that's what was desired. In 5D, you have an infinite number of choices, but separation is not one of them. As soon as you choose to separate, you fall to 3D consciousness, right? It's automatic. So when Earth fell to 3D consciousness and we all were given the free will to choose separation if we wished, it was not possible for the full source to remain on Earth any longer because that would have interrupted and denied people's free will choice to separate, right? If God is present, how can you choose separation? You can't. And so God had to leave Earth. And you can think of the full divine as being the full masculine and the full feminine, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, right? That are united in sacred marriage. And so in that moment, the divine feminine was bereft. She was heartbroken. And she made the decision that no, she could not leave humankind, that she would remain, so that those who wished to remember the divine could always find at least her. And so the divine masculine left, because with the full divine on earth, there was no way that it could remain in 3D. And it had to, because that was the plan for consciousness.
Mhm.
So the divine masculine left and was exiled from all the juiciness of human life on earth as we moved from darkness to light, as we moved from unconsciousness to greater consciousness. And so the midrash, the story is that once a week on the Sabbath, the divine feminine would join the divine masculine. And that's why the Sabbath has always been seen as a foretaste of the Garden of Eden, when there can be full oneness and God can be fully present here on this earth plane. Again, because there is no separation. So as we have grown in consciousness and we are further and further awash in 5D oneness consciousness, the divine masculine has more and more been able to return to this earth plane. But the exile has been very, very long. And in that exile, the divine masculine experienced all those things that we know so well from our human experience on earth as the masculine element of families and communities routinely was exiled and had to leave. As in, the men were called off to war, or the men were called off to travel for business or peddling or go to the market or be away or be sent to Siberia or be abducted as slaves, or, right? It just went on and on and on and on and on. The masculine has so often been separated from the juiciness of growth and life and birth and death and illness and parties and big events and significant moments, and has had to hear about it through letters that maybe never reached him, through a prayer that maybe was already, as they say in Yiddish, verfallen, pointless because he was already dead, through, a variety of things. Now we have cell phones and videos, and so our warriors who are, far away can participate in family events through Zoom and video, but it's not the same as being there. And we all got a taste of that as we couldn't be with our loved ones, even in the hospital as they were dying of COVID in this last year and a half. I mean, we all have gotten to taste what exile feels like. And we know that it feels like guilt and shame and loss and sorrow and grief and shunning and being left out and rejection and heartbreak and shoulda, woulda, coulda, and right? It's not okay. It's not good. And what happens then when those who have been exiled return is that everyone is so happy to have them back, but they no longer fit in the rhythms that have been occurring for such a long time without them. And so the coming back is really hard and it's really bumpy. And you talk to any military family and they'll tell you that it's the hardest time when dad or mom comes home finally. Right?
Yeah.
And everybody is eager to restore the power to the missing male but he can't assume the power because he doesn't know how things work. And so he becomes like a puppet, like a puppet figure,
Mhm.
when the real power still resides with the mother, who knows the routines and knows how everything works. And so he's like an emperor who's not wearing any clothes, which is catastrophic, right? So it's it is an ongoing, very painful experience. And of course, the other thing that happens is when we've been at war or out or exiled or in, cast away, and we return to what's supposed to be safe ground again,
Mhm.
and we're no longer um, on the battlefield, we then have the freedom and the spaciousness to begin to feel all those feelings that we had to suppress in order to survive those exile experiences. And we call that PTSD. And so after, the first 3 weeks of honeymoon, all those old feelings begin to show up again and resurface and have to be acknowledged and accepted and honored and dealt with and right. Mhm.
Yes.
And so I think that's what we're experiencing now as a world,
Mm.
as a whole globe. It's happening everywhere as the divine masculine very slowly returns. And so it's extremely bumpy and extremely uncertain. And everybody is angry and frustrated and feeling hurt and out of place and rejected and put down. And I mean, yes, whether you're
Mhm.
male or female, everybody is feeling
Yeah.
that.
Well, that's the thing, because
From
when you talk about the divine masculine, it's not just men. It's we all have the divine feminine and masculine within sorry, we all have the divine feminine and masculine within us.
exactly, exactly. And so just because the masculine is returned doesn't mean the feminine is now considered, disabled and handicapped.
Right.
And just because the masculine is now returning doesn't mean that he's capable of handling everything. And the confusion is huge and immense and intense, and nobody knows, right?
Mhm. And so, what do you think? And I remember we used to have this process. We don't have it anymore, or not in the way it was many years ago for the masculine, the male female balance.
Oh, I think I did that.
Mm. If you did, you did. We did a different process.
Oh,
Yeah, no, and it's cool. It's a great one. But way back in the day, there used to be attributes and qualities that each the male female had, and then it kind of the process evolved. So, but I remember, I wish I remembered all of them, but I remember, and I do think it's very important for me at least to try to recall, I wish, um, the attributes of the divine masculine are so much gentler than people realize, because we do have this association with the masculine having to go and fight and be masculine, if you will, all these attributes, right? In terms of protection and security. And yet it's the masculine who's quite gentle and the feminine who can be quite strong and fiery. And we've almost, we've kind of created this like sort of lopsided model of the male female or the feminine masculine. And we're having to write to that now. But because we can't quite grasp that, because we have these associations already, we're struggling. But do you happen to remember those words or any of that process, or no? I mean, I wonder, do you remember what
Well,
I'm talking about?
uh-huh,
Okay.
absolutely. So, the masculine, the yang energy, is about creation
Mhm.
and making and building and doing and increasing and expansiveness and light and honor and and obedience and loyalty and integrity and alignment, and
Mhm.
all of those are masculine traits.
Yeah.
The feminine, of course, is about the traits belonging to the feminine are power and abundance, both from the earth, right?
Mhm.
But along with that, then, if you think about earthiness, is darkness and shadow and contraction and embrace and encircling and enwombing and holding and right and
Mhm.
right, yeah. So and all of that is valuable. There's none of that that's not valuable and necessary and needed.
Mhm.
It just stops working well when I insist on living your life for you
Mm.
so that you can live my life for me, right?
Yeah.
when we right, when we say I'll give you my power if you give me your love, that
Mhm.
ceases to work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess that's not really dancing, is it?
it's not. It's an abdication of self.
Yeah.
And soon there's nothing of me left for you to love, and there's nothing of you left for me to dance with, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking at the time,
Yeah.
and
That
it's a
Okay.
was
long, long
perfect. Thank you.
conversation to be continued
It
because there's
is, yes.
so much to talk about with
So
this.
much. But thank you. Thank you for indulging me in that request, because it has just been sort of, again, just coming up and
It
peeking
does.
through, and it makes, and it's definitely an interesting thing. So thank you so much, Ellen, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for allowing me to be with you. It's such a great treat. I mean, imagine the luxury of getting to talk about spirit in this kind of depth and deliciousness with two deep and delicious women